Meanwhile, it's been a busy few weeks for tech to close out 2023. Just today, Apple pulling some of its watches off its website over a patent dispute, and the reported release of the Vision Pro coming in February. Joining us now is Ray Wang, Constellation Research founder and principal analyst. Ray, it is good to see you. Let's get right to this watch news, Ray. So Apple halting sales of its newest watches, the ITC saying Apple violated patents. You know, if you're an investor in Apple, you're watching right now, Ray, analysts estimate the watch probably accounts for about 5% of total company revenue. So this is a serious business. How worried should you be if you're an investor?
I don't think I'd be that worried. I'm wearing one of them right now, as you can see. And I think the issue really is if you look at the way the patents and the filing was made, the company Masimo, who builds the sensors, basically waited for Apple to launch and put the watch out before they filed the lawsuit. And it's actually very interesting to see how that plays out. So I think you're going to see a temporary blip for Christmas sales. But would the watch come back? I think it's highly likely to see it come back because it looks like a very, very interesting lawsuit. At first, it looks like a patent infringement lawsuit, but it also looks more like an interesting predatory patent lawsuit. And I think that's what investors should realize. There's two sides of that story. One is there may be a patent lawsuit coming from Masimo, but they also did it in a way that was seen very, very predatory to the market. And so I think that's what will ultimately be found out when the judge looks at this.
But Ray, I'm just curious how you think this actually ends, though. Do you think it's, does the White House step in? Is there some type of settlement that Apple does with Masimo?
It ultimately will end up, I don't think the White House is going to rule on that. Typically, when the White House rules in on something like this, they'll do it for a foreign adversary or a foreign organization. They'll rule typically in the favor of a U.S. company. Here we have a case where it's two U.S. companies that are going at it. It's probably going to be taken out in the courts outside of the U.S. ruling. And I think they're going to have to work that out. Or potentially there'll be a licensing agreement, as sometimes settlements work out. But I don't think it's a big blip. And if you look at the investors, I don't think they believe that as well. The street's saying the same thing.
At the same time, Ray, it's Julie here. The Vision Pro seems like it's going to be coming to market, according to some reporting here, maybe a launch sometime in February. But just like when they announced it, I struggle a little bit to see what the appetite for it's going to be. I mean, what do you think the sales of Vision Pro, how important of a product is this going to be for Apple?
I think it's an important product in the long run. In the short term, you're not going to see much of a sales blip or sales gain from the Vision Pro in the way that we'd see for a watch launch or for an iPhone launch or for a new Mac. But I think you have to understand that, and you probably do, that it is a replacement for computing. The ability to actually have no screens, no keyboards, use gestures, use voices, look at eye control. That's going to change the way we look at computing forever. And it's a replacement in the long run for a keyboard and a laptop. And I think that's the important part to look at. And so just as they start, it's going to take some time, but I think the estimates are 500,000 in the first year. And then as more software, more applications roll into the ecosystem, it eventually will take over and become a core product in the Apple lineup. But at this moment, no, it's not going to replace the watch or replace the Mac or replace an iPhone in terms of the volume of sales or the revenue side on the sales side.
And Ray, as part of your long-term kind of bullishness on the Vision Pro, is that because you also think Apple's going to get to work and introduce a relatively, less expensive version of the device?
That's exactly right, Josh. I think there's going to be different price points, as Apple normally does. There's a high end, there's a mid end, and of course, there's an entry point. And you see right now, it's an Apple M2 chip. Part of the miracle of Apple is really the fact that they go from chip all the way to the end consumer experience. And because they can put their own chips into, like the Apple M2 in this point, they have the ability to actually dictate how the pricing is going to work, how the cost structure is going to work over the long run, and how that supply chain is going to work out. And I think that's really what the difference is, their ability to be able to manage that process, drive down the cost structure, and of course, take a market to the consumer.
And Ray, it's kind of fun to think about all the use cases with the device. I mean, people talk about, obviously, gaming. I was also thinking, Ray, about sports, because I think about how Apple, listen, they've already got these partnerships with these big sports leagues, Major League Soccer, for example. Eddie Q, who runs services at Apple, he's a sports nut. I say that as a compliment. I wonder if that's going to be potentially a big end use case here. If they could really marry the tech and the sports agreements they have, that seems like a potential win there.
The ecosystem opportunities are amazing, as you're saying, Josh. I mean, the ability, you've got the compass magnetometer, the gyroscope, the ambient light sensor, all that allows you to actually have interactive sports, interactive collaboration. And that's just the consumer side. On the enterprise, think of the ability in terms of how learning and education is going to be. Think about what happens when you're collaborating on a design project and you can just move things in Minority Report fashion. That spatial computing explosion isn't here yet, but you can see and you can feel that it's just right at the cusp. And a lot of it's going to be getting battery weight down, getting components down, and actually driving down the cost structure.
Minority Report fashion. I love it, Ray. Looking through ahead of this, some of your holdings right now and what you're bullish on for next year, you're bullish on everything. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you're still pretty excited about big cap tech going into 2024. But do you think we're going to still have the same momentum that we have had this year for these stocks?
So it's a great point, right? It looks like when your tech is up, right? It's a risk-on environment. When tech is down or the market's down, this is kind of a flight to safety. The reason the Magnificent Seven are there and the Matana stocks that we talked about, it's the AI play. That's really the upside that we're betting on here. It's also the monetization that's going to happen. Companies that were in goods and services suddenly have ads, like Amazon. Companies that were just selling hardware suddenly built out a services business that's a quarter of their business, like Apple, right? And companies that were not seen as a laggard in tech come out of nowhere on the AI side, like Microsoft. And so that's really where we're seeing double-digit growth in the middle of a bad environment and double-digit growth in the middle of a great environment. There's still a lot of room to move. And so take Apple, for example, they could hit $4 trillion in 2024.
What do you think, Ray? I'll end it here. As the AI market evolves next year, Ray, we know about the big names that have clearly benefited from that boom of interest. You think of NVIDIA, you think of Microsoft. Are there other names, Ray, on your radar looking now ahead to next year that you think, listen, these are also names investors should be paying attention to as potentially also benefiting from that big megatrend?
Yeah, definitely. Josh and Juliet, take a couple here. Salesforce, definitely. You're seeing them embed AI across the board. That gives them an uplift. Oracle is a big player. Their ability to access and get to GPUs at a much lower rate than everyone and getting in early in the market with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and AI, there's a big play for them as well. So cloud and AI for them. Adobe, it's a great way to get in. You see Adobe Firefly has been taking creative by storm, and the ability to show where the generative AI plays a role in not just the images, the videos, the graphics, but every part of Adobe's portfolio. And of course, ServiceNow is also playing a role in terms of the world of automation and work. And of course, lastly, C3 is a great one because they've been in this enterprise AI space for quite some time.
Ray, great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.